Hey everybody, this is a demo to show you a little bit more about working with CSS to include background graphics within links and divs, and then also a little bit about animation and how animation works. So the way that I would like to do this is instead of doing like another week, we've been doing all of our weeks, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 11. So for what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create another file within week 11 and just start playing in it. So I'm going to hit Command N to make a new file, and I'm going to save this inside of week 11, and I'm going to save it as play.html. And so then from my main homepage, because this is part of week 11, I'm going to go to the end of my placeholder description for that, and I can just copy this and change index to play. And then I can change the text of the link to say, this is an HTML plus CSS playground. So now that link links to my play.html file from my homepage. However, you'll notice there's nothing here because we haven't put anything in there. So let's go back to our week 1 HTML file because it's like the most simple. We can almost treat this like a template, most likely. So we can copy that, go to our play.html file. Of course, you can retype all these things. You can grab them from any number of places, but it's nice to just have this like initial one that we're using as our template sort of over and over again. So we'll change this to say week 11 play. Here we can continue our same language. We'll call it the week 11 playground. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a link. I'm going to say href, and I'm going to just make it a link to nothing. One of the easiest ways to make a link to nothing is to just add in the hash symbol or the hashtag symbol. And basically what that does is that just tells the browser to like link, or tells the page to link to itself in the browser. So I just have like a nothing link, and then I will say like make work. So here I have a link. It says make work. If I go to it, I've got my hover state, which you can't really see very well because I've made the background dark, and you'll see here like the hover is black and the background is like a very, very dark gray, but we'll get to that. Okay, now because I want to play with this, I want this link to be different than some of my other links, or I want it to have a different style. So I'm going to make a different class for this link, and I'm going to call this class rectNav, like rectNav, as in like rectangle navigation. So this link is now of the class rectNav. What that means is I can now style any rectNav link different than any other just regular old A link. So I've copied this class so that I have it in my clipboard just now, Command C. So if I click over to my main.css file, if I scroll back up, you'll remember here, this is where we're affecting all of the A links. So all of the A links have these settings here. And then when I roll over them, all of the A links have, this is what happens when I hover. So here you can see when I hover, the background is black. And because I've made my background so dark, you're starting to not be able to see it so well. So how about instead, if I change the background to white, now when I hover over, it turns white, but you can see the text is also white. So in my hover, why don't I change the text to pink? So now when I roll over, I get a little bit more of an effect, and you can see it just changes the background to white and the text to pink when I hover. So to talk a little bit about animation just very quickly, one of the things that we can do, a very simple way to make interactive navigations just within our elements is, for example, instead of it just appearing when we hover, we can set it so that it will transition from one state to another. So if I go inside of the A here, so now I'm changing this for all A links, you can see up here, like even my back home link, that's changed, right? So every A link on my website is now changed to be these settings. So if I then say transition all 1S, what this means is transition all of the properties and take 1 second to do it. So when I roll over make work, it's going to transition from a background color of black to a background color of white, and it's going to take 1 second to do it, and it's going to transition the color of the text from white to pink. Again, it's going to take 1 second to do it. Now, you can look up this transition code on the web, and you can find out more ways that you can use it, all the way down to you can decide which properties you want to transition. So instead of all, you could put in like just color, for example. So if I save that and go over here, you'll see now like it has more of like a fading effect, right? So as I interact with it, it has that little bit of motion, and it doesn't have to be full seconds either. You can do portion, you can do fraction. So I can do like a half a second. So it's just like a little snappier, maybe even a little more, do like a quarter of a second. So now it's even snappier. So that's a little bit about animation within CSS. Is just as simple as adding this transition all to like your A links, for example. So then when you hover, it'll transition these properties. All right, let's get down to the one that we've got in our clipboard. So the one that we have in our clipboard is, I'm going to hit return a few times just so this text is a little bit higher. There we go. So what we have in our clipboard is rect_nav, which is a class of A. And so I'm going to write this one out so that I have the A here. And actually, why don't I also grab my little comment header here so that I can know that these are my playground styles. Okay, so I'll add in my squiggly brackets. What I want to do here is I want to add in a background image. What I've prepared is an image that is just some diagonal lines. So I'm going to define that diagonal line image as the background of this rectangle. So I will do that by starting to type out background, and then I can go down here to background image. Also, this is just one thing that's super handy about brackets as a code editor is it knows that we're in a CSS file. So it starts offering up all these tips and autocomplete hints for us. But this is also a great way to learn. If you haven't started doing this already, this is a great place to start playing around with, okay, I'm working with background. What can I do? Oh, position, repeat, size. These are interesting. What is blend mode? Oh, well, I know enough about Photoshop and Illustrator to have an idea of what blend mode might be. I can look into that. So you can start looking into these. You can play with them. And then you can also go look them up on like W3 Schools, for example. Okay, back to this. So I'm wanting to do an image. And the way that I'm going to load it in is with the URL. So I click URL. And then where I've put this image is I've put it up in this main images folder. And I will show you that in 1 second. I realize I clicked past that very quickly. So here I am just using the contextual menus to surf to where my image is. And then I will hit semicolon. Now, this CSS file is at the top of my website, the highest layer of my directory structure. So this is the CSS file that I'm currently working in. I made an images folder at this same level, and then I put this diagonal background image into that images folder. So you will notice that this path here is the path in relation between the CSS file and the image file you're loading. It is not the relationship between the HTML file that's loading the CSS file and the image, right? That would be a very different path. The path from play.html to images is ... to go up one level, then images, then the PNG. You'll notice here there's no ... because the path is the relationship between this CSS file and the image that I'm wanting to load in. Now, you will notice here that you can't see the image background yet, but I think you'll be able to see it when you hover. The reason is this is a PNG file that is black lines on transparency. So you can't see it until it rolls over and makes the background white. If you'd like to change that, because this background of this page is also dark, almost black. You can also change the background color of this rectangle, and I could set it to like aqua, for example. And so now it's aqua. The black is from the image. The whole rectangle is aqua. And then when I roll over it, the text still turns pink, but you'll notice I've overridden the background from this. So now if I want something different for my rect nav, I can type a.rectnav:hover, add my squiggly brackets, and then start typing out background color. And let's say I want this to be the pink background. Now when I roll over, it changes to that, but I can't see the text. So now why don't I change the color of the text to white? Right? Or maybe green. Oops. Punched it in wrong. Green would be the opposite of that, which is 0F0. So now my text is green, and you see I have a bit more of a rollover. The other thing you can do is you can adjust the scale of the background image. So if I do background size like this, right now the image size is like its default size. So if I do auto, it's automatically like the size that it is, sort of in the document. But then I can also scale it so that when I hover over, go down to size, it will instead be 50% of the container. So now when I hover over, it should like shrink down. Oh, and it happens too fast. So that is too small. So let's try 75%. And it's happening really fast. So for these, let's adjust. Right now, these A links are transitioning based on the primary setting that we've done up here for all A links. So we should be able to override that if we want to slow it down. So I want to slow this one down. So I'm going to do transition all, and let's do 1 second instead of a quarter second. And so now I should be able to. Oh, maybe I need to put it in both. Oh, it's because I can't go from auto to a percentage. I have to start out at a percentage and then go to a percentage. So let's adjust this so that it's, okay, so I don't need this one. Sorry, that was me troubleshooting. Okay, delete that. So we're slowing down the transition here to 1 second. We're going to set this so that the image is twice as big as it needs to be. And then we're going to scale it down to 75% when we roll over so that we can actually see those diagonal lines get smaller. And you'll notice it's scaling based on the upper left-hand corner. That's because by default, it is positioned at the top and to the left. But if we want to change that, we can change the position to be center, like so. And now when we hover over, it more like zooms in and out from the center, which I think looks much more like how I would have expected it to be. Okay, so that's a little bit about using background images, even as like graphic elements in this case, and adding little bits of animation and transitions to your links and to your elements on the page. So hopefully that was helpful. As always, please feel free to reach out.